I want to ask you a question. What is the greatest battle that never happened? Was it Anderson Silva versus George St. Pierre? Was it Prime Mayweather versus Prime Pacquiao? Was it the Shadow versus Mewtwo rematch that won't happen anytime soon because people are boring? Or was it Salt Poppy versus Deji? No, those aren't even close. Talking about things that were perfectly aligned to happen is a frustrating topic for me to discuss. Like, imagine planning for a day, a very specific day. You have everyone in order, all the pieces are put together, it's all perfect. But because of one tiny particular set of circumstances, it just falls apart, never to be in the limelight ever again. Let's then apply this to the Pokemon franchise. We never really got Pokemon Z. Shut up. Flygon never got that Mega Evolution. And in my personal opinion, the greatest thing that never happened, the greatest thing that never was surprisingly in the anime. This is the sad tale of Ash's Infernape versus Cynthia's Garchomp. The greatest battle that never was. Now, this story of course starts with the release of this little indie game called Pokemon Diamond and Pearl on the Nintendo DS. In it, you're able to catch magical creatures native to the Sinnoh region, and in order to start your journey, you must choose between 3 starter Pokemon: Piplup, Turtwig, and last but not least, Chimchar. Chimchar was easily the most popular one of the 3, with its final form, Infernape, being in a lot of people's top 10 list, and the staff for the anime knew this and decided to give Ash his own Infernape, but that's just way too easy. They needed Infernape to be the big star of the show. It was clear they needed to give him the best fucking storyline that would blow everyone's mind. They needed another Charizard, and so they got to work, using the woodworks of Charizard's story and not only make it bigger, but add on to it, exploring the relationship with his past trainer and building his character off of his abandonment. I think we all know the story of Ash's Infernape, but to sum it up, I guess, Chimchar originally belonged to Paul, a trainer that only saw Pokemon as tools instead of seeing them as allies, throwing away Pokemon he deemed as weak and pushing the ones he did keep to extreme degrees. This obviously clashed with Ash's viewpoints, and the two ended up becoming rivals, but the main situation that elevated their rivalry was in the tag team tournament. For some background, Paul was really pushing Chimchar to its limit, seeing his potential due to his Blaze ability, but no matter what he did, he wasn't satisfied. Instead of blaming his training methods, he blamed Chimchar, ridiculing him whenever he could, and the final straw was in this tag team tournament, where Paul just stopped. He didn't give any commands, so Ash took over. Afterwards, Paul just let him go. He wanted nothing to do with Chimchar, but Ash knew he could help him, so he took Chimchar under his wing, and on this point onward, the goal was for Ash to prove Paul's ideals wrong by doing things his way. Honestly, the whole plotline could be an entire video in itself, and there's more to talk about in the context of this video, but I think at this point it's time to introduce Cynthia. Cynthia is an absolute She's also portrayed as one of the strongest trainers in the games, and I always liked that in the anime they kept up this reputation by making her the 2nd ranked trainer in the World Coronation series, as well as making her the most developed champion character ever. Seriously, she plays a part in Diamond and Pearl, returns in Black and White, and makes a major comeback in Journeys. They love this woman, and throughout her several appearances, they portray her as a powerhouse. This motherfucker was about to easily 6-0 Paul with her fucking eyes closed, just for shits and giggles. That's how good she was. The possibility of Cynthia losing back then was little to zero, and the possibility of Ash having a serious battle with her was in the negatives. That shit wasn't gonna happen at any point in time because of this little thing called the Sinnoh League. I think it's pretty much a common opinion that the Sinnoh League is the best league arc. Ash uses returning Pokemon to actually get the shine. It has some pretty good preliminary battles like Ash vs Conway and Paul vs Barry, and easily has one of, if not still the best 6-on-6 battle in the entire series. Ash vs Paul was fucking huge. The battle they had beforehand in Lake Acuity was fucking brutal, with Ash barely able to make a dent in Paul's team. This shit broke him. Not only did Paul win, but it made Ash unconfident in his training style. Paul won both physically and mentally. So when Ash eventually got his wits about him, he decided to go with a foolproof strategy. He was gonna use the same team he used before. Okay, maybe not the best way to go about it, but he did make it work to be fair, and managed to use what he's learned since the battle to full effect. They went blow for blow, bar for bar. Weasel took down Gastrodon, Pikachu took out Frostlass, Gliscor took out that fucking Drapion, Infernape took out Ninjask and Aggron, Staraptor gave it its best effort, and Torterra. The battle was legendary, and it all came down to one matchup to decide it all. Infernape versus Electivire. These two Pokemon who were once teammates now have to fight for not only their trainers, but for themselves. It's beautiful, and no, I'm not overthinking this. The kids show did it on purpose, but after plenty of brutal exchanges going down, finally mastering and harnessing the power that Paul couldn't, Infernape won. All this buildup, all this vengeful hatred to prove Paul wrong, and he finally did it. Okay, this is great and all, but what does that have to do with Cynthia and Garchomp, you may be asking? Well, in the end, when all was said and done, Paul and Ash have this pretty neat interaction, with both of them promising to continue their journeys and have another battle in the near future. It's only then when Cynthia mentions that they will meet again in a champion tier battle, and she believes that she will fight the winner of that battle. This was one of the only times where it was even mentioned that Ash would have a chance to have a serious battle with a champion. So clearly, at some point, Ash and Cynthia are gonna have a battle later on in the series. And the perfect ace for Ash to have in this battle would be Infernape, and he would obviously go up against Cynthia's own ace, Garchomp. It's perfect. And Ash just got done with the quarterfinals, meaning if he just won 2 more, he would have that opportunity. And then Tobias happened. I made it no secret in my Ash evolution video that the Tobias fight was complete bullshit. They literally made a character who had all legendary Pokemon and just popped them in the Sinnoh League specifically for Ash to lose. There's no other way to look at it. Yeah, moments like Sceptile beating Darkrai and Pikachu tying against Latios are some of the best moments in the entire series, but I feel like this was such an ass pull, especially considering that Tobias just murks the finals. So Ash would have won if Tobias didn't exist. They're just rubbing it in at that point. I think now that we've gotten Ash's complete story, this loss doesn't hit as hard, but this made me sick to my stomach as a kid. My goat was getting murked by a cheetah! And after this, the foreshadowed battle with Cynthia looked like it would have to wait. Now, what does Infernape have to do with any of this? I mean, yeah, Cynthia did want to battle Ash, but nothing really hinted at Infernape being the ace of it besides them being from Gen 4. Well, near the end of Diamond and Pearl, we get to see Cynthia in one of her championship title defenses against Elite 4 trainer Flint, who has an Infernape. Flint is getting smoked, and Infernape is his last Pokemon. And while he's pouring his heart out against Garchomp, we get a moment where Ash visualizes himself against Cynthia with his own Infernape. This is the championship battle Cynthia was talking about. Ash knows Infernape is the perfect Pokemon to go up against Garchomp. This was a great way of subtly building up a battle that we wouldn't get to see for over a decade. But hey, at least when we end up getting it, Infernape would be a guaranteed slot on Ash's team, right? I mean, this is the perfect setup. And considering there have been plenty of times where past Pokemon have gotten a major battle spotlight in a different series, meant that this battle was still going to be on the table. Right? Oh, the next 3 generations didn't bring back any Pokemon to battle for Ash, except Charizard for some reason. Okay, so in the first 4 generations, Ash was able to use his reserves, as a lot of people like to call them, from previous regions. He used a bunch of his Kanto-mons for the Johto League, saved his reserves in Gen 3 for the Battle Frontier, and once again used his past Pokemon in the Sinnoh League. But for some reason, starting with Gen 5, they just stopped doing that. Yeah, from Black and White to Journeys, Ash doesn't use any of his reserves for battles besides maybe like 1 or 2 rare instances. This could be because Black and White was seen as sort of a soft reboot for the franchise, so they didn't want to confuse anyone with his past Pokemon. But then they randomly have Charizard's ass here, so what the fuck? You expect this change to happen because they want this specific region to have the Pokemon shine, but Ash's Unova team is the least developed. And this trend continued no matter how many times fans clamored clamored for Ash to use previous Pokemon. I love Lumio's trainer Zach, I watch his videos all the time, and I was watching his prediction videos for the Alola League back when that was still coming up, and the sheer amount of cope in hoping that Ash would use his reserves is just fucking sad, man. Give the man what he wants, it can't be that hard, dude. Black and White, X and Y, Sun and Moon, 3 generations without Ash using his old Pokemon in some sort of battle. It seemed that this was going to be a mainstay for the series, pushing us further and further to the fateful battle. Plus, it wasn't like Ash was getting anywhere near championship level. Like, come on, Ash, champion? Really? Well, that was until Ash's battle with Kalos champion Diantha, where, for the first time, Ash was battling toe-to-toe with a champion. I believe this specific point was the push the writers needed to have Ash finally be a champion-worthy trainer, and this came true in the next series, where Ash was finally able to become champion of a region. I know a lot of people think X and Y should have been his first one, but I personally disagree. Actually, watching Sun and Moon made me realize that this was the perfect region to have Ash finally win. And the next series, Journeys, sees Ash go through his most difficult challenge yet, the World Coronation Series. And guess who's at that number 2 spot? Cynthia. Finally, a way to bring back some of Ash's old Pokemon into the mix, considering he's facing some of the greatest trainers in the world. And then when the time comes, we can finally get that epic clash with Cynthia. So you wait, and wait some more. Oh, Ash gets a Riolu. That's cool. And wait some more, and throughout this time, Ash uses 0 of his reserves. So you think he'll eventually use them in the Masters 8 to surprise people, but no, he doesn't. And when we get the battle with Cynthia, it's Lucario that's the one to land the final blow, and not Infernape. All this build-up and foreshadowing just for the opportunity to fly by in an instant. All of this because of a few small details that prevented this battle from happening. Think about it. Black and White being a reset for Ash meant that he couldn't use his reserves, and thus started the trend for the rest of the series. Tobias just existed, and finally they decided that Lucario would be the main ace for Journeys. These things, and maybe even more behind the scenes stuff, prevented the greatest battle that never was. But is that really a bad thing? Okay, I know I went all sad mode, but realistically, it doesn't really bother me that Lucario was used instead of Infernape. Yes, from the beginning, Infernape was built up as the Pokemon Ash would use to beat Cynthia, but honestly, Ash beating Cynthia at all was already satisfying. The build-up from Diamond and Pearl to Journeys was done subtly yet effectively, and it also helped build Lucario's development in that series, which is fair. Also, the battle is just cool. Like, Ash is fighting Cynthia. I can't be too mad. There's not much more to ask. That's not to say that Journeys doesn't have its problems. Out of all the past Gen 5 series, this was the one to bring back Ash's reserves and give us battles we've been waiting for. But that's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess. Infernape may have never gotten that grand battle, but just seeing Ash win everything in the end was probably enough for him. And maybe it's fine to just let things go at some point. And so ends the tale of the greatest battle that never was.